Well, hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar. My name is Kimberly Anderson. I'm the Executive Director for AIA Central Valley, and I will be the moderator for this Economic Outlook. A few quick housekeeping reminders before we get started. Please use the chat box to ask any questions for today's panelist, and instead of using the Q&A, instead of using the chat box, please use the Q&A feature. This will allow attendees today to like questions, and that will move them to the top of the list. We're going to get through the entire presentation today with Ida, and then we'll address any questions at the end. And we have about 8 to 10 minutes to address questions. This session qualifies for one AIA Health Safety Welfare Learning Unit for those watching live. AIA California staff will report those units for you once you finish the session. As always, all webinar content and additional resources will be available on the AIA California website shortly after the session. Today's sessions provides a regulatory update on recently passed regulations that will be effective in the California Building Standards Code next year and offers attendees information on how to engage with state agencies in the rulemaking process that will impact sustainability and carbon reduction in future codes. Now I'd like to quickly introduce our presenter before getting the program started. Ida Clair was appointed as state architect by Governor Newsom in April of 2021. She began serving as acting state architect in January of 2019. She concurrently served as principal architect for the division of the state architect, where she managed the accessibility, sustainability, and fire and life safety programs for public K-12 schools and community colleges, directed CALGREEN and access code regulatory development, and administered the Certified Access Specialist CASP program. She's also an amazing 2022 AI Central Valley president for our chapter. Ida, welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to share my screen. First, I want to give a big shout out to Kim for being an awesome executive director. Thanks, Kim. And also to Rebecca for working with me on this program that we're bringing to you today. Thank you to you both. I did want to, I noticed on one of the slides, Rebecca, it does say 1.5 HSW credits, and I believe this presentation is only an hour. So can you clarify that for sure, that it's only one unit that will be provided, just so it doesn't cause any confusion later on. Okay, so I'm here today to give you a little bit of information about DSA and what we're working on. At DSA, we've got a lot going on, even though we're still teleworking in the pandemic. Some of this presentation may be a little repetitive to some of you if you're very familiar with DSA, but not knowing specifically everyone who's attending, I figured we can make this a little bit more broad-based and specific to those endeavors that we're working on. Oops, sorry. DSA is part of the Department of General Services. As such, we do have mission objectives. That is to be consultative, effective, collaborative, and sustainable. And a lot of what I'm talking about today actually meets these 4 targets. And so we're very proud to be a part of the Department of General Services and share in these mission goals. DSA has the authority for quite a few programs. Primarily design and construction oversight for fire life safety, accessibility, and structural safety for California K-12 schools and community colleges. And through that is through the Field Act. We do have additional responsibilities that provide us statutory authority. That's for the Project Inspector Certification Program, Testing Lab Certification, DSA Academy, which is our training arm, CASP certification, Certified Access Specialist certification, CASP outreach to businesses, sustainability outreach, and of course we have statutory responsibility for code development for structural safety, sustainability, accessibility, which of course is statewide. Our sustainability and structural safety is specifically for schools. And structural safety is also for essential services buildings. So we have a lot of intersection. Okay, our structural authority, here's real quick, I'm not going to go through these, but for your reference, if you want to know where our authority lies, it is in these sections. We do have 5 offices run by headquarters. Headquarters is our main office, and run by myself as the state architect. Deputy to the state architect is Kirk Cooknick. Principal structural engineer for codes and standards is Diane Gould. Principal architect for codes and standards is Eric Drever. And then of course we have a chief of administration who is Justin Smith. And all that contact information is on our website. We also have 4 regional offices to serve the state. Region 1 is Oakland. Dessa Rooney, principal architect, is the regional manager. Sacramento is Office 2, which is run by Harlan Raymond, who's the principal architect in Sacramento. The Los Angeles regional office manager is Douglas Humphrey, who's also a principal architect, and the San Diego regional office manager is run by our principal structural engineer, Craig Rush. And this, of course, is color-coded to those areas. And so if your project needs to be submitted to DSA, you would go to our website and determine which area your project resides. It's project specific, and therefore submit to that local regional office. For the design and construction oversight of K-12 public school campuses and also community college districts, you can hear the numbers that we cover. We have over 1,000 K-12 school districts, which comprises about 9,300 campuses throughout the state. We have 72 community college districts with 114 campuses throughout the state. And then, of course, essential service buildings that are state owned essential service buildings. And then, of course, for access compliance, it's all state funded construction with some exceptions in statute, but mostly all is state funded construction, which includes California State University and University of California if their construction is state funded. We do have some exemptions of when projects do need to be submitted to us, and you can find that in IRA 22. We have on our website a list of publications that assist you in determining when projects need to come to DSA if you are not familiar with that. I will tell you that this presentation will be provided to you after the fact, and there are live links in this presentation to assist with you finding the documents and the information that I'm going to highlight today. But we do have an exemption threshold of approximately $120,000 for all disciplines, meaning if it falls under that threshold, then school projects do not need to be reviewed. There is a higher level of exemption when there is no structural work and the project contains no access compliance work, the project contains no work that triggers path of travel improvements, and the project meets all fire and life safety standards. And of course, sometimes to ensure that all that happens, you may need to request a pre-application meeting for confirmation with DSA. And then, of course, exempt projects must still comply with all the design, construction, and inspection requirements that the CBC requires, but the school district is responsible for compliance with the code requirements. And the exemption is only applicable to alterations. New construction is not exempt. There are also exemptions for maintenance work, which are defined here and in the code. And I will say that maintenance work does not include replacement of large mechanical, electrical, or plumbing systems. Oftentimes, if the structure is affected, it will trigger path of travel improvements. And then, of course, maintenance does not also include work on structural framing or reinforcement other than repainting. All right, we submit, all projects are reviewed electronically. We work on an appointment process. There's forms that are required to be submitted about 6 to 8 weeks in advance of an appointment. We ask that you make an appointment, and it's not like the doctor's office where we say we don't have an opening. We take all projects. We just request that 6 weeks so that you can reserve those 6 weeks and continue working on your documents. And we can plan to have staff available for you to review those documents when you come in for your appointment. The fees that you pay for our plan review are submitted upon document submission, not at the appointment time. And I will tell you that we usually get into reviewing your project within 5 days. That's our target date from submission. So if there was stories you heard of DSA of old, where drawings kind of sat in our files for 6 weeks, we revamped that whole process about 4 years ago. And now the 6 weeks that the drawings used to stay in our files are now actually in your office. And so you can continue working on them. So that's how the appointment process works. We transmit files through DSA Box. It's box.com, but and we set it up and give you access to folder permissions, and that's how you communicate with our staff. And then, of course, all our projects are done through electronic plan review. Prior to the pandemic, we did most of our plan review electronic, but we still had over-the-counter paper projects. And of course, our back check, while it was electronic, it was in person. Our construction change documents were also in paper. But when the pandemic hit in March, within a week, we transitioned everything into electronic review. And we've received word that our clients actually prefer that. And so everything now is electronic and remains electronic. We use Bluebeam sessions for that review process, and it's an engagement with the design professionals through that software, which is, I believe, free for use download, but I could be wrong about that for the user end. For us, obviously, we have the software to run our systems. I will say that we are looking at returning from informal telework is what we called it. And when we do, we may resume paper over the counter projects because we find sometimes that that process is actually faster, but that will likely be upon request of the client if they want a paper over the counter project review. So more to come on that. We do encourage you that you meet with us at project planning. We are available 5 days a week for preliminary pre-application meetings. And so there is a form, one for each office, that's submitted electronically in making that request for a preliminary meeting. And we really, really encourage it. There's no charge, there's no fee. We just ask that you reserve that time so we can have the appropriate staff available to talk to you. I will tell you at that meeting, minutes are taken, they're put in the project file in DSA box for easy reference, and provided your scope doesn't significantly change, we adhere to the guidance that we've given you at that pre-application meeting. But it does help a project proceed and advance more smoothly because an expectation is set and an understanding is set way in advance before you actually develop a lot of your documents. So we really do encourage a pre-application meeting. Our offices are open while we are still on informal telework. We do accept appointments now, and we can arrange that, provided you schedule an appointment to meet with our staff. If you request to meet them in person, we just need to call them in from telework. They're all available to do that. So it's up to you whether you want to meet with us in person, or obviously we still meet virtually via MS Teams, Microsoft Teams format. A little bit more now about our work in progress. May submittals, we are processing. So the projects that were submitted in May, the appointments, we are now presently reviewing in June. And so May submittals was approximately $755 million worth of construction. And that is presently on our tables for review. The most voluminous region was San Diego with 67 projects consisting of 47% of the work, dollar value of the work. Second was Los Angeles, and then third was Oakland, and Sacramento had a really light month in May. And as our workload increases, which often it does, if there's an office that has a lesser workload, we will actually move projects into a different office just so that we can keep on time and in reviewing a timely manner in reviewing your projects. If we do get severely impacted, prior to the pandemic, there were years, or actually I should say months, where we had over $1 billion in construction in appointments. And so we do have a method of engaging staff overtime and also consultant contracts to provide that review for you so that we can be timely. But right now we're having no issue in performing that review with DSA staff. June, so our pending workload of appointments in June, meaning these are projects we will be working on in July, you can see is quite still consistent at about $566 million. We do tend to see a little bit of lull in the summer because many projects were submitted March, April, May to take into consideration summer construction at school campuses. And this year, of course, we are anticipating a ton of work in November and December because there's a code change, and that always happens. And so we do want to let you know that if you plan to submit to DSA and get into the 2019 code as opposed to the 2022 building code, please do so as soon as possible, if you can, to prevent this rush, because obviously the greater impact that we have in projects trying to meet the code change, then of course that increases our overtime, it increases our ability to use consultant contracts. So we'd like to get it in advance so that we have timely review for you. Okay, and then of course our pending workload in July is just starting. While we do 6 to 8 weeks in advance, we will considerably see these numbers increase, but you can already see we have appointments, and these are projects that we will be reviewing in August of already $214 million, almost $215 million. Okay, so a little bit about our legislative and regulatory update. Last year, AB 306 was passed that covered employee and faculty housing projects for public schools. And as a result, the legislature determined that these projects do not need to come to DSA for review if they are employee and faculty housing projects. They are reviewed by the local jurisdiction. A reminder that projects are public housing because they're by a Title II entity, which is a school district, if it's a public school district or a community college district. And it's also housing at a place of education if it occurs on a school campus. So it's very important that that the requirements for accessibility are followed. And so we have this guide, this DSA guide to public housing. The link is provided here. That's on our website. This was created, which really increased the accessibility for many of the public housing projects. And it actually has in their flow charts to address even federal standards that are maybe applicable to your project. And so we really encourage this use to ensure accessibility, the requisite accessibility for your projects. While these projects, this employee faculty housing projects, are reviewed by the local jurisdiction as per this statute, DSA may still provide some oversight, because if the projects are on a school campus and they interface with the school campus, we may require fencing around them to protect the students on the campus. Distances, we want to ensure fire, life safety, safe dispersal areas are maintained, and also accessible routes are maintained. And so we will likely provide a cursory review once these projects come into construction, just so we can make sure that the remainder of the campus is preserved as compliant as it needs to for its maintenance of accessible features and maintenance of its fire, life safety features. There is a bill, SB 169 was passed last year as well, which was funding for post-secondary education student housing. This was a requirement. Obviously, we're addressing this through California community colleges, even though it applied also to CSU and UC, the funding sources. I will say that full submittal to DSA is required for these projects if it's a dorm, if it's student housing on a campus or on district-owned property. Full submittal to DSA is required. If it's a dorm off campus but leased by the district with a purchase option, full submittal to DSA is required, and it must comply with the Field Act. Access compliance review by DSA and submittal to the local jurisdiction is required if the dorm is off campus and leased with district state funds used for construction, but remains leased. And if projects are both public housing, a reminder that projects are both public housing and housing at a place of education. And so using that guide that we have on the previous slide is very important. For CSU UC projects, we do still need to have access compliance review for these projects as well. And I will tell you that because it is a local jurisdiction review, they may do their own access compliance review, and we are available to field any questions where there's conflict. Obviously, our authority supersedes theirs by statutory authority for state-funded construction, but we can't preclude their review. So there may need to be some engagement of DSA with the local jurisdiction in that effort. A little bit about the 2022 fire code rulemaking. These are just some of the highlights. Of course, the fire code is promulgated by the state fire marshal, but we are engaged when it comes to school construction. And these are some items that are important because it actually places responsibility on the owner to maintain an inventory of all required fire-resistant rated construction and construction that's installed to resist the passage of smoke. And such construction needs to be visually inspected annually and properly repaired, restored, or replaced where damaged, breached, or penetrated. This is likely going to be performed by the local fire authority, not DSA. And so DSA has the authority during the construction process, but a lot of the maintenance items here, when it comes to visual inspections, are performed by the local fire authority. And so it's important that school district owners need to know that they need to maintain these, maintain the fire resistant construction and demonstrate that they've provided inspections for that. Also, in wildland urban interface areas, landscaping needs to be maintained. And so it needs to be fire resistant vegetation and maintained, and the local fire authority will likely also check for that. And if you want more information on the specific requirements, I've provided a link here. You're going to look for the final express terms, that's the terminology, to see what the new regulations are. Energy code. Again, DSA does not promulgate energy efficiency regulations. That is the Energy Commission. But as it relates to all non-commercial construction of which schools are a part, they have kind of flipped the standards on its head. As you know, historically, the standards do have rewarded fossil fuel use, and that has now changed starting in January 2023, January 1st, 2023. The prescriptive method and performance method energy budgets are based on heat pump technology for water heating and HVAC systems. And you can, in the performance method with energy calculations, you can use fossil fuels if you need to, but you're significantly going to have to increase the improvements to your envelope in order to have your budgets calculate appropriately. There are some exceptions for zone 1 and 16. Zone 1, Sierra Nevada, I believe, and zone 16 is, no, I think zone 1 is the upper Northern California coast, and 16 Sierra Nevada. I may have that switch, so don't hold me to that. But those are the two areas. You can meet the requirements with dual fuel due to the fluctuation in temperatures during the day. Photovoltaics and battery storage is required. Photovoltaics are required. The battery storage, if I recall, are required for projects over 5,000 square feet. And of course, the energy regulations in 2022 do not address cooking or other gas end uses. It's really tied more for process systems, water heating and HVAC systems. But it is this significant change that we're anticipating that rush at the end of this year. The requirement for photovoltaics, the requirement of how the energy is calculated, the requirement of heat pump technology, we think is seriously going to impact ERUSHA projects into our offices by the end of the year. To read more about the energy efficiency regulations, I have a link here to the Energy Commission's building efficiency standards for 2022. Our access rulemaking, this is conducted by DSA. It affects the entire state, all public accommodations, commercial facilities, public housing, and public facilities. The regulations that DSA promulgates for access affect all those facilities. We actually had quite a few, a small package this past access rulemaking, which is good. Just because a lot of change, sometimes it's helpful not to have a lot of change. We have actually been working on setting the stage for other endeavors that we're presently embarking on. One was addressing training through our DSA Academy, which I'll cover a little bit more in a bit. But we are also moving ahead to completing our detectable warning study, the study for the durability, resiliency of the detectable warnings. If you notice in the code, it says that only approved detectable warning systems need to be used, and there are none. And that's because the study wasn't completed about 10 years ago. And so we are working on completing that study right now. CALGREEN rulemaking. So as I stated before, DSA is responsible for CALGREEN rulemaking for public schools and community colleges only. But we do work very closely with Building Standards Commission and align our requirements for ease of use, and also so we can make tandem progressive requirements with the Building Standards Commission for all non-commercial construction. So a little bit of information that is school specific is we made some clarification on shade tree requirements, and we also require, as of January 1st, 2023, CO2 monitors for new K-12 classrooms. And then with BSC, we addressed volatile organic compound limits for thermal insulation and acoustical tile ceilings. These were in the voluntary section. We've moved them into the mandatory. And the other endeavor that we proceeded with BSC is the requirement for the installation of EV equipment. And so the requirements right now have increased, and this is for new parking areas and additions to existing parking areas on campus. So anytime you're actually installing additional parking, 20% of the parking spaces need to provide the infrastructure below ground and the connectivity of the power to the panel. Those are called EV capable spaces. And then of course, of that 20%, 25% need need to be provided with a charger to provide active charging. This will also be new as starting in January. And also, this is also another one of those items that might affect our project workload this December, if it's brand new campuses, and perhaps the choice to not address the installation of a charger might be making a decision on that for some schools. Structural safety rulemaking. This is just very brief. More of the requirements are actually provided in the links, but here are some highlights. With the administrative code, construction, there's no need to apply for an extension. Once your project's approved, it's approved for 4 years. So there's no need to make repeated requests. That is actually in effect right now. When regulatory requirements are in the administrative code, they become effective 30 days after it's recorded with the Secretary of State. It doesn't have to wait the entire year as building standards do. So that is presently in effect right now. Building code requirements in 2022 repealed the early adoption of mass timber and adopt the IBC requirements for mass timber. So the requirements are still there, just California had its own early adoption measures that were not in the International Building Code. And then there were other technical requirements and edits, but they were more to address clarity and consistency. And then I'm going to talk a little bit now about our collaborative and work groups. And so we have in DSA, a big effort that I've engaged in is trying to really engage effectively with our stakeholders and not make our decisions in a bubble. I'm a firm believer that we all have great ideas and we can all advance the initiatives that affect specifically our schools, but we have our collaboratives that also address, a wider audience, and I'll cover that as I present the collaborative options that we have for you. So we used to have a DSA advisory board years ago, and those individuals would kind of stay on our advisory board for a long period of time. And then the advisory board went a little defunct. And then when I came back, or when I came into the acting role, we kind of turned that a little on its head and created the Public School Construction Collaborative, which is really a stakeholder representative group. And it's quite a large group, but they do serve a term. They provide applications, they're selected, there's a term limit that they cycle off so another person can come on. And we had 2 meetings last year when we started the collaborative. And we have not yet had a meeting this year, and that's because we have some other work groups where we're engaging. But we do plan to have one soon. And really the Public School Construction Collaborative is engaged if there's an issue that the members say, this is an issue we want to meet. And so we'll set a meeting, but also if there's an effort that DSA wants to reach out to the collaborative and say, we have some issues and policy issues that we want to discuss with you and throw your way and get feedback, then we will also schedule a meeting. So this has been really informative and successful as well. I think the members have found great value that they have this forum from which to participate. I will tell you that we do require the members to have a network of greater outreach. The architects should be connected to a group that connects to a larger body of architects like the AIA, same with the structural engineers. And that's so they can go out and get feedback, bring it back, and then they can also take information that we have and engage others in that process. Access Code Collaborative runs the same way. Of course, this is statewide, and we have also ACC members. I will say that we had some members just cycled off for the first time. And so we just held applications for new members, and those are in the process of selecting those new members right now. We do take applications ongoing. So once you submit an application, it's good until you either decide to remove it or want to update it, because sometimes we have to have some members, they decide to step off and then we'll fill in. But the members are selected with our partners, the California Commission on Disability Access and the Department of Rehabilitation, so that it remains a fairly neutral organization that is not handpicked by DSA. And so we do actually participate in the selection process as well, but it is in collaboration with those other two agencies. This has also been very successful. Our previous to the Access Code Collaborative, our rulemaking in access has been quite contentious. And our engagement with our stakeholders, this forum really allows an opportunity for people to speak candidly and frankly about the concerns that address them for all our stakeholders, whether it's disability advocates, individuals with disabilities, building officials, architects, building owners. They're all represented on the ACC. And so it has really engaged the discussion and produced some really good development in access regulations. Our present task force that we're in the thick of right now is the existing buildings task force. It's somewhat like a collaborative, except that it is, again, representative stakeholder, but it doesn't continue. So remember, our collaboratives continue on. A task force really focuses on a specific item. And this item that we're focusing on is actually the reuse of existing buildings, or existing school buildings. It's both a structural safety and a sustainability item. The regulation right now states that when an alteration achieves 50% of its building replacement value, it's required to be seismically upgraded to full compliance with the code. That due to construction cost volatility, that has really triggered this trigger on examination of having cost estimates submitted to prove that it doesn't meet the 50% value, or if it does, triggering the requirement in the code. And it's caused a lot of issues in years of planning for schools. And so we convened a existing buildings task force. It's still ongoing. In fact, our meeting number 4 is Monday. Again, it's representative. It has been so completely beneficial, I think, to everyone involved. And right now, some solutions are simmering up to the top, which we will be discussing on Monday. So it's very exciting because it, again, demonstrates that bringing everyone at the table and collaborating on a solution works. And so I keep telling everyone, trust the process, trust the process. And that's been actually happening. So I'm very excited about that. We will continue with the task force until we have regulations that we can put forward in the intervening code cycle to address this specific issue of the California Administrative Code, which is the 50% replacement value. But what's also really important about this is that we really need to reuse our existing buildings. It is no longer sustainable to just keep destroying and demolishing them and creating new, because it's not very carbon friendly. So kind of achieving 2 efforts with this. And then in DSA, as a part of DGS, we do have strategic goals. Our strategic goals are with 2 sister agencies this year. Our goal number 1 is called our tri-agency workshops. And that's with DSA, Office of Public School Construction, and the Department of Education. We've had 2. Our goal was to have 3 this year. We've already had 2. The one on February 3rd was a discussion of transitional kindergarten and kindergarten facility improvements. The recording is available on our website if you're interested in watching it. And then our second one was on May 5th, and it was planning for and addressing natural disasters for school facilities. And it was also in partnership with the California Office of Emergency Services. That recording is also available on our website. And the next event that we have is planned for August. And I think we're trying to address sustainability from our 3 office departments. So more to come on that. We have actually a meeting today to plan that further. If you want to know where those meetings or where those recordings are, please go to our Interagency School Construction Resources page and click on 2022 meetings. You will find both those there. Our second strategic goal is with AIA California is intimately involved in, and that is our roadmap to CALGREEN carbon neutrality. This is an effort that is a strategic goal for Building Standards Commission, which is part of DGS and DSA, but it's also, we realize that CALGREEN needs an overhaul and really needs to start addressing collaborative process. We have reached out to a lot of industry groups and partner agencies. Again, as I stated, AIA California is a big part of that. And together we are brainstorming how to do this through CALGREEN. And we will have our third meeting coming up June 30th, I believe. I'm getting these from, off the top of my head. I could be wrong, but if I will tell you how to subscribe to BSC's listserv and our listserv so you can get notices on that, and you can participate in this if you want to. The carbon neutral, CALGREEN carbon neutral, CALGREEN Carbon Reduction Collaborative. Sorry, that is an error. This is an old slide. I apologize that. There's also information provided on our CALGREEN code development page at the DSA website, and it does need to be upgraded, but it will be covered under the CALGREEN. And then it's also covered on the Building Standards Commission webpage. Again, here's a link under the CALGREEN Carbon Reduction Collaborative. So that's how you can find meeting information. But again, as I stated, if you subscribe to both our listservs, you will get information on when that occurs and also the link how to connect. We also have another work group that we're working with BSC, and that's the CALGREEN Electric Vehicle Work Group. You can also participate in that. There's information here, and that continues our work to advance electric vehicle charging through CALGREEN for non-commercial construction. And two other work groups that are on here. One is the plumbing code and one is existing building code. The existing building code work group is really handled by State Fire Marshal, even though DSA is participating on that. And the plumbing code is an effort that we are working on with BSC on all gender multi-user restrooms. Right now, the California Plumbing Code does not permit it unless you do an alternate means and methods of compliance. So we're trying to correct that issue. But I do want to, we have not yet embarked on that task force yet, or those discussions. They will be happening soon. Again, you can find out more information in subscribing to BSC's Building Standard Commission listserv. But I do want to call you for a video that we did on AIA Central Valley Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. Here's a link to that video, and it was called "We All Gotta Go, Restrooms for All." And the AIA Central Valley Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee, the Committee on Architecture for Education, DSA, the California Department of Education, and the California Building Standards Commission all participated in that video, and it was quite informative. So there's a link there. And a little bit about program and document updates. I know that I'm looking at my time and I have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep moving along. We've updated our access compliance reference material as of July 1st, 2021. Here's a link. This is a free document. And what's important about the Access Compliance Advisory Manual is that it has Department of Justice advisories that are in the ADA. As many of you know, the ADA is our model code for Chapter 11B, but it also has DSA advisories on California regulations, on regulations that are specific to California. So this really is a very handy tool, and not very many people know that we have that. And so I do encourage you to download that. That is a free download, and it provides just a little bit more insight on the regulations. We also have a video on electric vehicle charging station accessibility and frequently asked questions. Here's the guide to public housing on this webpage that I had talked about earlier, along with some other, the valuation threshold when it's updated. So this is a valuable information for access compliance reference materials. We, unfortunately are still faced with school shootings and school violence, and it's a great concern, obviously, with the tragic events that recently happened in Texas, but also previous emergencies. DSA did address an emergency preparedness and classroom security document. That's on our Fire and Life Safety Plan review page. We encourage you, if you are a school or a school district facility professional, or even an architect that works for the school district, to read this document, because it's important to maintain fire and life safety requirements and accessibility requirements. And many aftermarket devices, in fact, the majority of them do not work to provide, to maintain those requirements that are required in the code. We do encourage you that you consult with DSA prior to making any modification. Sustainability plan review has been implemented at DSA. It is very high level, but if your project, many of the requirements in CALGREEN are applied to new facilities or additions to new facilities. And so we are doing at intake a review to ensure for inclusion of shade trees and EV charging when it's required. It will not hold up your plan review, but if it is required, you will be required to submit those documents prior to closeout of back check so that they can be reviewed for the EV charging infrastructure and shade trees. And of course, as we head into 2022, there may be a little bit of an increase in that preliminary review to ensure, that the requirements are included. That also includes the requirements for the outdoor water regulation requirements for improvements to landscape irrigation areas. And then, of course, we implemented last October acceptance testing, which is required by the Energy Code now. This is really handled by the project inspector, and the information does not come to DSA, but the project inspector will ensure that acceptance testing is implemented for schools, and they are required to submit those documents over to the owner at the close of construction, and DSA ensures those documents are turned over. But we don't have those documents submitted to us. It's really more of a follow through with the project inspector, and we've provided training to the project inspector on what they need to do to meet the Energy Code acceptance testing requirements for HVAC systems and controls and indoor and outdoor lighting and controls. And of course, acceptance testing ensures that the installation of these devices and controls, or these systems and controls, comply with the code, comply with the requirements, that they operate as designed, and is also a way to ensure annually that that information can be used to ensure that they maintain in operable form so that energy efficiency can be achieved. We applied, obviously we have a project inspector program. I'm not going to get too much on that, but we have resumed testing. We know we need more project inspectors for school construction. So if you know anyone who's interested, please encourage them to be a project to apply for a project inspector and certification. And then recertification now is provided on remotely on DSA Academy. And then of course, the Certified Access Specialist program. We have reduced our fees last year, and so it's much more affordable to become a CASP now. Of course, the exam still is a challenging exam because it is a specialist exam, but we have hit over the 1,000 mark of access specialist. And if you're interested in finding more, our next CASP 101 is a 3-part live webinar for which you do get HSW credits for AIA. Here are the dates, 11, 18, and 15 from 10 a.m. to noon. Those are Thursdays. Our next exam is in June 15th, so just I think next week or soon. And our final exam of 2022 is October 19th. Our exams are usually held February, June, and October. Okay, I'm still checking the time. Have about 7 minutes. I encourage you, if you need free on-demand continuing education units, we now have an updated California EVCS accessibility on our DSA Academy, and you can get 1 free California Architects Board credit, 1 free AIA HSW credit on the accessibility requirements for electric vehicle charging stations. Our DSA Academy also does provide additional training. One is the all-electric California Schools Kitchen of the Future, and that should also provide, when you need it, the California Architects Board training credit for zero net energy. And then we also have a green schoolyards information on the DSA Academy, and this will be updated as we endeavor to bring more training to you. So a little bit about our big push right now is addressing sustainability. We address sustainability from a perspective of safety. Of course, we address structural safety, fire, life safety, and accessibility. Those are all safety concerns and tied essentially to the Field Act, and also safe passage for everyone on campuses through accessibility. But we see sustainability as also safety, and that's how we are approaching our sustainability objectives and education and outreach program. And so, as you know, California leads the way. It started with executive orders by the Brown administration on setting targets for zero emission vehicles and greenhouse gas emissions. And so those executive orders are still in place. And of course, with Governor Newsom's executive orders, he encourages all state entities to double their efforts to achieve these targets. And we are part of the governor's administration. And so our goal is trying to do that as well through CALGREEN and through our education and outreach program. And so here's how we're doing that. We have an Achieving Net Zero Energy and Net Zero Carbon in School Facilities page. There's information here on a lot of our events, as well as DSA Academy. You will find more information here, and if you subscribe to our listserv, as we have more outreach events, you will be aware of them. But here are some that you can find some information on, and I'll highlight some of these right now. We participated in the CHIPS update. It's a 5-year update, and this is California specific. So we address this so that the requirements also aligned with CalGreen. We're working with the California water boards on stormwater capture and runoff management to bring in schools into compliance with the MS4 permits. And so not sure they are taking the charge on this, and there's buzz that they're going to keep doing this outreach, and we haven't heard when the next meeting is, but we know it's coming. But we did work with water boards on this document to address guidance for stormwater and dry weather runoff capture on schools. We worked with Frontier Energy and PG&E on the electric California's schools kitchen of the future, and that's how to transition all our cooking facilities on campuses into electric appliances and induction cooking. Really great webinar. And our biggest effort was our Getting to Zero Over Time program, where we took NBI, this is a collaboration with New Buildings Institute, and we developed a toolkit for our K-12 schools to develop sustainability plans so that every single improvement or alteration is tied to setting a goal for carbon-free and zero net energy future for our schools. We tied the sustainability plans are developed to building life cycle events for new construction, major modernization, system replacement, equipment replacement, operations and maintenance. I'm checking to make sure that this text is, thank you, the 15-minute alert. That's what I got. And operations and maintenance, I am almost done. We had initially, this happened through the pandemic, and we had 58 schools that participated. The goal was that they work monthly on the sustainability plan. Of course, COVID impacted that somewhat because schools were otherwise occupied. We worked with sustainability champions, which means they were volunteers, but we did develop the toolkit. We still meet with them every 3 months now. Our goal was to get them to complete it if they didn't in the year, to continue the work and then be a resource for them through office hours to address their concerns. So there's a little bit more information there about the cohort. And what is wonderful is that New Buildings Institute developed this guide, Decarbonization Roadmap Guide for School Building Decision Makers. This document is as a result of the Getting to Zero program with DSA. So we're very proud of it. And here's the toolkit. It's there available for all of you. And here's the download link. And so we encourage you to, if you're a school district or even if you're an architect, to really let the school districts know that, that they really should be engaging in this. And we're going to continue our efforts to do that. I will tell you that our next endeavor, wait, let me do this first real quick. We now have the California School Sustainability Showcase on our website. We plan to highlight a sustainable public school, whether it's community college or K-12 school, on our website. There's a Q&A with the school facility personnel and the architect on here. And our goal here is to engage, to have people read about it, see the amazing work that's happening in our California public schools to get to zero net energy and zero and carbon-free future, and create a network so that you can call them and ask questions and be empowered, right? And so what's beautiful is you're on our landing page, and as I stated, and then obviously there's a link to the Q&A and information about the project. And this, as I stated, will change every 3 months. And there is an archive of all these projects on our website. What's next? We're launching a community college cohort. We hope to get that RFP out in the next couple months and hopefully launch by 2023, similar to the Getting to Zero K-12 schools cohort. And of course, on DSA Academy and our educational and outreach program, trying to provide additional training for key stakeholders that is specific to schools, and also exploring additional training partners. So if you're interested, reach out to us. If you're interested in being a training partner and you have a good idea for engagement, we will put it forth with you, record it, and put it on our LMS, learning management system. I'm almost done. All right, so if you have a project tour and you are a school district, please let us know. I really like to engage our staff in being available and seeing what their collaboration in your projects can do for them. And AIA Central Valley has always been very gracious about that. And so I'd like to get other AIA chapters involved as well. There is a DSA local office near you, and they would love to be included as an invite to your schools when you have them as tours. And subscribe to our listserv. This is the front page. Go all the way to the bottom, hit subscribe, and we cannot subscribe you. You have to subscribe yourself, but there's items that you can check. And I'm done now. How did I do? 9 minutes left. Okay.
Right on time, Ida. Great job. So much great information. I wanted to just reiterate, I know it's been addressed in the chat, but there will be a PDF of the slides with live links, and a recording of this will also be shared afterwards. So watch for that. We did have a lot of questions, and I ordered them by upvotes because we have to be done here in 9 minutes. So we're going to start with the questions that received the most thumbs up. The first is there anywhere we can get the approved alternate means and methods for the all gender multi-user restrooms that is referenced in the current plumbing code?
Yeah, I will, we don't have like a formal document. It's usually made as a request, and we review them as those requests come in. But as we strive to address the all gender multi-user issue with building standards, we can look in creating a document so there is some guidance with it. But right now, if you have those questions, we just want you to reach out to the local regional office, and they work with you on a project by project specific basis, because that's how alternate means is addressed. I will tell you that in that requirement, it's not just proceeding with the change in the plumbing code, which allows all gender facilities by exception. It's also that we have to align it with accessibility code requirements, because right now how we interpret all gender facilities is a bit unclear in the access code. Is it interpreted by multi-user? Is it interpreted as a group of single user? We have to proceed with dual rulemaking to clarify those requirements. So right now, like I said, reach out to your local DSA office. And then obviously, as we proceed in rulemaking, we'll be providing additional guidance moving forward. And you can participate in that rulemaking as well if you subscribe to our listserv. Next question.
Thanks, Ida. The next question is, will DSA be pulling together some sort of handouts for larger items that change with the upcoming code 2022 CBC? Ida's explanation with the EV parking was a good start.
So EV parking was done in the last code. We really didn't have any measures in this most recent update, but I do encourage you. There was a significant change in the last code cycle for which we have the training. Usually for access, we do work on code development, and we are trying to address right now a detectable warnings training on our LMS. That's in process. We know that that's seriously needed, but we are a little short-staffed at DSA. If you want to come work with us on access compliance regulatory development, give us a call. We did just have a hiring go on, and we're still in that process, but let us know. But as I stated, our training is ongoing. Usually when it comes to school specific, we address that through interpretation of regulations, and those are in development addressed by the 2023 code, and those will be on our website.
Thank you. Okay, we've had a DSA backtrack on agreements made during pre-app, such as requiring the inclusion of PV array engineering with the submittal rather than as a deferred approval as agreed in pre-app. How can we better ensure that pre-app agreements are adhered to by all parties?
So without knowing the specifics, when it's not adhered to, it's generally if there's a scope change, and I'm not saying that in your project there was, But if you want to reach out to me, if this can't be resolved through the regional office, we can discuss further, but I need to investigate specifically to your project.
Thanks, Ida. Let me look here. Number one issue is water statewide. What is being done to the plumbing and overall code to encourage gray water? Sorry, it keeps bumping around here as people ask more questions. Gray water systems and whole building stormwater retention.
So a lot of water regulation is done. We don't address water regulations in CALGREEN other than what we can bring in as building standards from the development that occurs at the water boards and Department of Water Resources. So we are working with state agencies. They set policy and we interpret a lot of that policy into building standards. So if you look in CALGREEN, there are requirements for fixture flow rates, and there are requirements for the model water efficiency, MWALO, model landscape ordinance. Sorry, I messed up the acronym, but those are brought into building standards so that they can be enforced by local jurisdictional entities, but those requirements are not necessarily set by DSA or building standards. They're set by the Department of Water Resources. Bringing them into building standards just provides a method of enforcement for local agencies and DSA to be able to enforce them. So a lot of that engagement that question really needs to be addressed to water resources, and we take their direction. But they're constantly looking at that all the time. I mean, we understand that our water is precious and it's problematic, but we don't have really the authority to address that.
Thank you, Ida. We have a lot of questions here, so we're not going to be able to get to everyone's in the remaining minutes, but rest assured, Ida will be addressing these and they will be attached to that follow-up email. I think we can fit in maybe one more, and the next one upvoted was, how does acceptance testing differ from commissioning? Thanks.
Sure. So commissioning really starts essentially, I should say acceptance testing is part of commissioning. Commissioning starts ahead of the process, right? And you're designing those systems to target specific objectives. And then also commissioning ensures that through the drawings and through the construction process that those objectives are met, and oftentimes continues, a year of use so that you can see and track energy use. Acceptance testing basically comes into the point where it says, I'm here on this site, I'm seeing what's installed, the acceptance testing technician specifically. I'm seeing what's installed, I'm seeing what's in the documents. I'm ensuring that what's in the documents is actually provided in the facility, and I'm ensuring it works as provided. So it's really an accounting of, do you meet the code? Is it installed per the documents? And do the controls work like they're supposed to? And have you met the wattage requirements that you haven't replaced bulbs or anything that trigger or that can cause the energy documents, the lighting documents, the HVAC use documents to go awry. So it's really an accountability at construction acceptance testing is, whereas commissioning is a much more holistic process from planning to the end of almost to a year after the project.
And Ida, I'm going to sneak in one more little quick question. Can we request for both pre-app meetings and SD meetings prior to submitting the application?
Yes, a SD meeting is essentially still a pre-app meeting. We just call them pre-application meetings. So anytime it's prior to documents being submitted, you can have one, you can have two. There's no limit. You just need to make that request.
Perfect. Well, we are right on the hour here. I just wanted to thank you again, Ida, for this extremely informative presentation. A lot of thank yous there in the chat. I think people enjoyed this very much. If you've made it this far, AIA California staff will submit CE credit. It will appear on your transcript in a few weeks. And as always, a recording of this presentation and additional resources and tools can be found on AIA California's website. And any remaining questions that weren't addressed, Ida's agreed to do those in writing, so you'll see those. For more details about AIA California upcoming webinars and how to register, you'll see those in a follow-up email. And thanks again to everybody for joining us. We'll see you at the next webinar.
And if you have additional questions, you can always reach out to me via email as well. It's on the website. Thank you.
Thanks, Ida. Take care, everyone.